When you hear the words Thomas the Tank Engine, the first thing that comes to mind is probably the classic TV series, or maybe the modern CGI series, or perhaps even the books for which both series are based on. Video games are rarely the thing you think of. Children's titles are pretty hit or miss. You can either get a surprisingly good one or a really terrible one, and Thomas is no exception. You're probably wondering, how would someone even go about adapting Thomas into a video game? Well, several companies have tried with varying results. There are Thomas games for the Sega Mega Drive, the PlayStation, the Wii. Thomas even has a plug-and-play system, but none of those are what I'm interested in. Today, I want to talk about some specific games that don't really get much attention. A series of Thomas CD-ROM games that came out in the early 2000s that I absolutely adored as a kid. I was curious to see how they all held up, so I bought the games on eBay, and after working out a few of the kinks, I was ready to go. So let's dive right in and see what these games have to offer. We'll start with the Great Festival Adventure, the first game in the series as well as the only one I don't remember playing. The festival is coming to Sodor, and you must help Thomas and friends prepare for the event. You'll start by doing some maintenance on some of the engines. You'll then help clear the tracks and store packages at the harbor, followed by collecting passengers at the station. After that, you'll help Terrence herd some cows, set up the festival stalls, and finally direct the band. The game is basically a collection of minigames, very loosely connected through the plot. The games are fairly simple, which is expected for a game made for children. Most show you a set of items and have you match them accordingly, with a few games straying from that format. Each game has 3 stages, with the difficulty slightly increasing each stage. Emphasis on slightly. This is still a kid's game, so don't expect it to be much of a challenge. If you complete all 3 stages of a minigame, you're rewarded with a certificate, which I guess is the main collectible of the game. You can check out the certificates in Sir Topham-Hatt's office, along with pictures from the minigames, both of which you are encouraged to print out. After every game, you are treated to a cutscene. They don't really have much to do with the plot and usually have Thomas interacting with one of the engines. This is probably a good time to talk about the game's visuals. 3D rendered graphics are used to recreate the island of Sodor. The models and animation are nowhere near the level of the CGI series, but for the time it was created, it's pretty decent. I appreciate the modeling all 7 of the main engines, even if some only made brief appearances. Their designs are fairly show accurate, with the exception of the face, but that's nothing new with Thomas merchandise. My only real gripe with the game is that it's so slow. Some of the animations take so long and there's no way to speed up or skip them. The Terrence minigame is the worst offender. Also, the game would completely freeze whenever it had to load a new scene. Although that might be because I'm running it on a computer 13 years newer than the game. The next game we'll take a look at is Trouble on the Tracks, the game that I remember most fondly. On his way to collect coal for the other engines, James has a nasty accident, and we must help get him back in working order. You'll start by finding where James crashed in Harold, then collect coal with a lorry, followed by rescuing James with the breakdown train. You'll then find him new parts like a whistle and a lamp before finally repairing James. The game is very similar to the last one, following the same minigame collection format and even recycling some of its assets. That being said, Trouble on the Tracks feels like a more streamlined version of the Great Festival. This time around, the minigames feel more connected to each other and to the plot. The minigames in Great Festival all felt so detached from each other and out of context could really apply to anything. But the games here make the most sense in the context of the story and generally flow better. Going from the lorry game to the crane game, then to the whistle game didn't at all feel jarring. On that note, the minigames actually require a bit of skill. With the Great Festival, it was pretty easy to blow through a game with minimal thought. Here, I actually found myself putting in real effort to finish these games, especially when the difficulty increased. Again, this is a kid's game, so it wasn't ridiculously hard, but I can definitely see this being challenging for younger players. Certificates also make a comeback with a new spin. Completing a minigame once grants you the junior certificate, and replaying it on higher difficulties will give you the senior and the master certificates. Not a major difference, but it allows players to be rewarded even if they only decide to play on the lowest difficulty. It definitely seems like they became more confident with the cutscenes as they have much more of a presence here and look a fair bit more impressive. You'll notice a lot more character movements, more ambitious shots, as well as new settings and models. It's still not perfect, there are a few animation errors and some odd shots here and there, but it really is satisfying to see them put this much effort into a children's game. The game also ran better than the Great Festival. It never stuttered or stopped, it transitioned smoothly between scenes, and no animations felt too dragged out. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the music. It uses a bunch of character themes from the show, but also a few original and remixed compositions that sound amazing. Each one is soothing and easy to listen to. I could honestly listen to this game's soundtrack for hours. Just listen to this rendition of James's theme. Simply fantastic. The next game in the series is Railway Adventures. In this one, you assume the role of Thomas's new driver and must drive Thomas around the island and complete various tasks. This game is interesting as it is the only one to come with a peripheral. Packaged with the disc is a console that you place over your keyboard to play the game. The red lever drives Thomas back and forth while the green one switches the tracks. Pressing Thomas's face will give you advice on what to do, and the whistle functions as the action button. It allows you to couple up the trucks, enter minigames, and generally interact with the world. Also, on a side note, the console won't work on modern keyboards. It's designed to fit into the grooves between the keys, and modern keyboards have smaller grooves that it can't fit into. Luckily, I was able to find an older keyboard that worked. Now, it is feasible to play the game without the console, however, I don't find it as fun and you don't get the same level of immersion. There are 5 main locations: Wellsworth, Elsbridge, Brendam, and Coley Fell stations, as well as Tidmouth Sheds. Tidmouth is the main hub of the game, and where you'll select the mission you want to play. There are 4 missions you'll be playing through. You'll collect and deliver Birdie's passengers, help repair a broken bridge with Harold, find and sort the missing mail, and deliver supplies to the airfield. Each one is really creative and uses the console in interesting ways. You can replay all the missions with things playing out differently. The first time you go to the airfield, you might collect fuel for Harold or a mail car for Caroline. The second time around, you might have to bring a coal truck for Percy and a mechanic for Harold. Playing a mission once gets you a certificate, and replaying it gets you more pictures added to Sir Topham Hatt's scrapbook. Outside of missions, there's plenty to do. In between stations, you'll be switched to Thomas's cab view and freely roam around the island. You can find mini-games to play which each offer a unique style of gameplay and can also give you a certificate. There are signs that will show you brief clips from episodes, and sometimes you'll find another engine when you visit a station. Despite being restricted to the rails, it feels like there's so much to explore. It's so much fun just driving Thomas around. It can be tedious at times, especially if you don't know where you're going during a mission, but it certainly is a unique experience. Now we'll be taking a look at building the new line. In this game, Sir Topham Hatt wants to build a new branch line and asks you to construct it. Rather than a mini-game collection, it's more of a decorating game. You'll start the game by choosing an engine to run the branch line, your options being Thomas, Percy, James, and Edward. You'll then decide on its location and layout. You can choose the farm, the quarry, or even the docks, and have 5 different track designs to choose from. After that, you'll build the track and decide on the cargo you'll be transporting. You'll then decorate the line with trees and rocks and then test it out. And that is basically the entire game, and if it didn't sound that interesting, I'd have to agree. The level of customization in this game is very limited. Despite advertising being able to build your own tracks, you're restricted to following one of 5 templates. Kids would love it if they could design a track how they wanted. The most freedom you get is placing the decorations, but even then, there are so few options. And testing the track afterwards is a completely optional step that doesn't reward you with anything. You don't get new decorations or even a certificate, and it isn't even that fun. You simply just drive around the track. You can stop at one of the buildings to pick up or unload cargo, but doing so feels so trivial. Occasionally, there will be a disturbance on the track, like hay bales falling over or George paving over the rails, which you'll need to fix. But as I said, there's no need to do any of this, as you can simply press go as soon as you finish building. After testing the branch line, you can clean up and decorate your engines for the grand opening, but there is not much to talk about there. The visuals also take a dip in quality. They try to mimic the look of the previous games, but they don't do it well enough. Everything looks so drab and simple, and the animations don't look that impressive. The game as a whole is just not that interesting, and it's a real shame as I thought Railway Adventures was going in such a good direction. Now this change in direction is likely due to its developer. All games till now have been developed by Mind's Eye Production, but this game was developed by Stunt Puppy Entertainment, and clearly they had a different vision when they were given the Thomas license. And now the final game of the series, Thomas Saves the Day, which despite its name has nothing to do with that episode. A big storm hits the island of Sodor and you must help fix all the damage, i.e. help engines in need and find missing cargo. This game is a point-and-click adventure, which if you've seen my SpongeBob video, you'll know that I happen to really like this genre. However, this game is a rather poor attempt. How the game works is at the start of each chapter you're given an objective, typically to find an item and deliver it. You look around the island navigating by clicking on signs that each represent a location, and at some point you'll likely play a minigame. And each chapter takes roughly 4 minutes to complete. One of the appeals of the point-and-click adventure is being able to explore the vast world, find clues, and solve puzzles. But this game has very little to explore. Several notable locations appear like Knapford and Wellsworth, but each location is so small with no room to explore. Most point-and-clicks let you walk around the environment and uncover hidden items, but here you'll be stuck to one part of the screen with nothing interesting to find. And on top of that, you hardly spend time at any of these locations. You'll either be rushing by these places on your way to your next objective, or grabbing an item from somewhere and leaving. And they practically give you the solution to all the game's puzzles. In the game's second chapter, Percy asks you to get him a new lamp. You literally go back 2 screens before finding it on the ground at Knapford. No effort was required whatsoever. And then there are the minigames that aren't remotely challenging even on their highest difficulty, which is a big disappointment when Railway Adventures got it so right. What I like about that game and Trouble on the Tracks is that they made the players think. The games aren't so difficult that younger players will get frustrated, but aren't so simple that they'll lose interest in it. But here the games are so basic and simple, you really have no reason to want to replay them once you're finished. This game also looks the worst out of all the games. It uses some renders from Building the New Line, which didn't look good to start with, and they somehow look even worse. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it might be that the renders clash with the bland backgrounds. And that does it for the Thomas CD-ROM games, a varied collection that understandably doesn't get much attention. The games aren't particularly revolutionary and are relatively low quality, but I thought they deserve some appreciation. On a side note, I was actually playing the UK version of Building the New Line, simply because it was the cheapest one I could find. The only difference between the UK and the US releases are the narrators, and this is true for every game in the series. The UK got Michael Angelis, while the US got Robin Smith. And honestly, the UK got a better deal. They got their native narrator. Now, Robin Smith is by no means a bad narrator. In fact, he's done some voice work for Thomas before, notably on DVD menus and some audiobooks. But the US games would have been that much better if they could have got Alec Baldwin, who was the narrator at the time. Railway Adventures is certainly the best in the series. It's a fun and creative game that will keep young players entertained for a good while. It certainly kept me busy as a kid. Having the console to drive Thomas around, while not necessary, certainly adds to the immersion of the game. And honestly, this is the closest thing we'll get to an official Thomas train simulator. On the other hand, is Thomas Saves the Day and Building the New Line. 2 extremely underwhelming games that frankly feel like cheap cash grabs. They're very simple and boring and offer no replay value whatsoever. At least now I can see why these 2 aren't talked about much. If you're interested in getting these games either for yourself or for a young Thomas fan, I definitely recommend the first 3 games. You're certain to get the most enjoyment out of them. Anyway, this is where I'll end the video for today. I hope you guys enjoyed and I thank you for watching. Anyway, bye.